Hello and welcome to Ask GCN Anything.
Yep, this week we answer your questions on aero bikes, on sprinting versus climbing, and on the Dirty Dozen.
A little bit of everything then. And don't forget to be in with a chance of winning a free 3-month subscription to Zwift. All you have to do is use the hashtag AskGCN Training in your comments.
Of course, for any non-training related questions, you can use the hashtag talkback.
First up, we have a question from Christopher Jenkins. Hi GCN, one of my favourite things to do is ride in the hills. I want to improve and train for this type of riding, but I was wondering if my genes could hold me back and actually I could train to be a better sprinter than climber and not know it. Am I wrong for training this discipline because I find it more desirable, or can your body adapt to either equally with correct training?
Well, I think, Christopher, there probably isn't such a thing as a wrong discipline. You should really do what you love. That's the most important thing. And at the end of the day, if we train optimally, we're all ultimately going to be limited by our bodies and our genes. And yes, there is some kind of genetic predisposition to be good at certain types of cycling. So depending on like what size you are, your body composition, how much muscle you usually put on, and what kind of muscles you do put on. So if you're more fast twitch or more slow twitch, lung capacity as well. But at the end of the day, those are really quite slight differences to the effect of training, and by that I mean lifelong training, so you know what you've been doing for the last 20 years or however old you are and however long you've been cycling. So for example, I can't sprint at all, but that's probably because I've spent 25 years doing endurance sport and never training at sprinting because I hate it because I'm crap at it. So, and I think that often we think that you're either one or the other because, you know, if you watch the World Championships or the Olympics, we see the extremes of human performance where they're both genetically predispositioned to be good at their event, probably at that level, and they've spent years and years training it. I mean, I know that people who call themselves sprinters can get really, really, really good at climbing, whatever their initial body type, just by training it. I don't know how you feel about sprinting.
Yeah, well, actually, when it comes to racing and sprinting, your end result is dictated as much by your positioning as it is your actual ability to sprint. So if you're out with your mates or you're doing a race, then you can pay attention to that as well as including some training. You know, you're going to improve.
Yeah, you're going to improve at what you train at, if you train well at it. And I'm not sure what you think your genetic limitations are because you haven't been more specific, but I think that I wouldn't worry too much about that. You know, you should train for what you love. And you know, if you are 150 kilos and your FTP is fairly low, then it's going to be tough to do long climbs, I admit, because power to weight really is very important for longer climbs. But that's trainable, so keep training at it.
And we have some top tips for your climbing anyway.
Yeah.
Why don't you check them out?
Some hacks even.
Are you too fond of food to cut back on calories? Don't worry, you can lose weight from your bike much quicker. Leave the bead-ons at home. In fact, take the bottle cages off altogether. Wear your lightest clothing, take off your underjersey, take off your gloves, take off your socks, don't need sunnies. I mean, you can even take off the saddle because you're going to be standing up sprinting the whole way anyway, right? And weight is everything.
Next question comes in from MTB Junior. Hashtag talkback. What is more important, aerodynamics or weight or your power?
That's a really good question. And actually that depends a little bit. So when it comes to going uphill, then the steeper the hill, the more important your weight's going to become. And the same with aerodynamics. The faster you're going, the more important that aero will become.
Exactly, yeah, because obviously your aero drag increases with the square of your speed. So the faster you go, the more important it gets. And there's no point where you can say weight stops mattering and aerodynamics matters. It's obviously they're both involved in slowing you down. It just depends on the terrain which one's going to be more important. I used to say rule of thumb, 20k an hour. Chris says 30, but then he always went faster than me. But like, so if I was doing a time trial and I was going uphill and it was slower than 20k an hour, I'd sit up to feel more comfortable. But if it was faster than 20, I'd get down on the aero bars to stay aero. And that's very much rule of thumb. Yeah, so they're all important, frankly, if you want to. And power, you're always going to need some power to ride your bike. So power is always important. I think we can safely say that.
Definitely. Work on the power and then the rest kind of follows as well. Like your power to weight will be better and aerodynamics is less of a factor for you.
And if you're trying to work out which is more important for a certain course or a certain route or a certain race, that's quite a complicated equation because you have to look at all the different sections where it's flat, uphill, downhill, and work out the optimal power, the optimal weight, the optimal drag. I mean, it's possible, and there are tools out there to do it, but it takes quite a lot of work. And you know, if I were you, I'd just concentrate on riding your bike, training well, being powerful. Yeah,
definitely. Because once you get to like 60 k's an hour, in fact, a lot of the energy you're putting into the pedals isn't going to make you get that much faster. Yeah, so you're better off just being really aero and saving the energy.
Yeah.
We now have our Zwift question, which is from Jonathan Zapala. Hi GCN, I'm training for the Dirty Dozen race in Pittsburgh. So I'm focusing on 1 minute and 5 minute power. Which is the best way to increase those powers? Right now, I'm doing 1 minute intervals at a wattage in between my 1 and 5 minute bests with a 3 minute recovery twice a week. Yeah.
Well, Jonathan, that is a unique and fantastic event. For those of you not familiar with the Pittsburgh Dirty Dozen, it's a race that consists of the 13 steepest hills in Pittsburgh. 13 because it's a baker's dozen. There's a bit of a snag though, because you race up the hills where the top 10 competitors on each hill receive points, but between the hills it's neutralised, so you ride easy from hill to hill. In fact, this is sounding quite good to me until I found out that the hills are crazy steep. We're talking 20 to 37%. That's a steep hill.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely brutal. And because the event is so unique, your training will have to be as well. So you'll want to focus on getting some really good, high quality, maximum efforts out of your body and then recovering fully before doing them again. So if you don't have loads of hills in your area, something like 8 to 10 times 30 seconds of maximal efforts before a full recovery and then going again. Which, you want to do that overgeared as well because you're trying to replicate the high torque efforts that you'll be doing on these climbs.
Basically, in the event, you are going to run out of gear. So you need to practice that horrible feeling of running out of gear. So practice out of the saddle climbing, overgeared, and it's going to feel horrible, but you need to get used to that. You also need to get used to the lactate you'll produce. So for longer efforts, you could go, for example, for 6 to 8 by 2 minute efforts maximal, but you need to start them overgeared. So suggest starting maybe the first 10 seconds out of the saddle overgeared and then sit down and carry on overgeared for the rest of the 2 minutes. And you're never going to feel like you're on top of that gear. It's going to feel brutal all the way.
Yeah.
But that will prepare you pretty well for what sounds like a really very tough event.
It does. It doesn't sound like my idea of a day. It's almost going to be like weight training, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do remember to recover fully between the intervals because that's key. That will happen in the event. You don't need to start each interval, racing. You should obviously be going flat out, straight from the gun on the interval. So there's no rolling into it, but recover really well between the efforts.
Yep, and good luck. There's loads of workouts on Zwift if you want to check any of those out to train indoors over the winter.
Yep, indeed. So your 3 months of Zwift membership should really help you with the training.
Yep. Enjoy and good luck. Next up, B-Con writes in with, is there a big difference in comfort on an aero bike compared to a lightweight bike? I've been thinking of buying an aero bike for some time now. And what kind of aero bike do you recommend?
Well, that's a really good question. And I think that, to be honest, you can be just as comfortable on an aero bike as on a lightweight bike. And so you don't have to assume it's going to be less comfortable. It will feel different though, potentially. So some people find that super aero bike feels stiffer. And if you put super aero deep section wheels on, then it will definitely feel different, especially in a crosswind. So I really struggle, for example, with the deep section front wheel because I just can't hold the bike up in a crosswind. So there are differences for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing you want to take into account is the position on the bike as well. Most aero bikes will be slightly more, kind of extreme, forward and lower at the front as well, whereas a more comfortable lightweight bike will be slightly more relaxed.
Yeah.
So you want to take that into consideration. But bear in mind that your body actually makes up the most of the drag, so the bike makes a very small difference, or you will feel it, but your body makes more of a difference. So go with whatever you feel you can get into a better position on.
Yeah. And if you can't cope with the low front end of an aero bike, then that means that you're not flexible enough to get into an aero position. So it might be a false sort of way of trying to go faster. And actually, when it comes to choosing a bike, I'd advise going to your local bike shop and trying out a few bikes because they all feel different. Like I think the aero bikes from different brands will feel totally different.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more to how a bike feels, and whether it's aero or lightweight, the handling and the geometry and the position, and just if you love a bike, you love a bike. So I think you should try them out first, and then you'll know.
Yeah, choose the one that's going to make you want to ride it.
Yeah.
And if you want any extra tips, why not check out what the pros choose?
So it's more about the ride feel than the weight. So it's more that they feel more comfortable, maybe.
Got bikes that actually are like a bit heavier in the mountains, but they feel better on it. So that's what it is. Like it's all about the feelings, not about the weight on the end.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you've got to feel good to ride well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next question comes in from Barnaby Grant. #Ask GCN Training. I'd love some advice about carb loading, specifically repeated loading. I have a month coming up where I have about 4 races, spaced about a week apart, each of which is an endurance event, which would see a significant benefit from carb loading. However, I'm worried about the effects, if any, of carb loading repeatedly. Any thoughts?
Well, there won't be any side effects other than if you overeat, you're going to put on weight. There's a big difference between carb loading and overeating, something that a lot of people actually get quite wrong.
Yeah, me, for example. I'd always overeat from nervousness the night before a race. No, but like the science shows pretty clearly how much carbs you need, and you knew your numbers, didn't you?
Yeah, so you want to weigh yourself first off, and then the day before the race, or the 2 days before the race, you want to eat around 8 grams of carbohydrate per kilo of body weight per day. So if you weigh 75 kilos, that's around 600 grams just of carbohydrate, and you probably want to find them from like quite an easily accessible source, so white bread, pasta, that sort of thing.
You don't need too much fibre.
No, exactly.
And you
not
also
the day
don't
before
need
a
too
race.
much fat.
No.
Because that will slow your digestion down and it won't bring you that much help in the race.
No, and then the day after the race, you want to reduce that a little bit down to like 5 to 6 grams per kilo. So yeah, that's about 400 grams if you're that weight.
Yeah. So obviously you do need some carbs the day after the race to help with the recovery and replenishing your muscles. And then in the week between race days, you can eat slightly less carbs. But I should emphasise that you need enough carbs. In a period like that where you've got so many races close together, you shouldn't be doing any fasted training really, because it's quite fatiguing. And your focus should really be on being fully recovered for your event. So make sure you get enough carbohydrate. But slightly too much is probably okay, but if you massively overeat on carbs, then you will put weight on. So that's
and you'll feel sluggish.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I felt really good, but it was mostly mental. If I overate, I felt so guilty that I raced really hard. But So that's the only real bad side effect. Obviously, if you change your diet massively, from if you normally eat loads of vegetables, then you suddenly eat no vegetables, then you will see a bit of a change in your digestive system, and you will feel sluggish.
Yeah.
So I'd try it out, but you need to eat enough carbohydrate. There's no benefit to going low carb in this period.
No, and on the morning of the race, you want to make sure you leave that good 3-hour window before the race after eating. Otherwise, you'll get to the start line and you'll just struggle with breathing.
Yeah, feel a bit sick.
So we then have a question from Leo Francescini. Hi guys, I'm incorporating some mobility and stretching sessions into my training program, and I'm wondering how often and when I should do these sessions, before or after a workout, on a rest day.
Generally, people recommend these days to stretch after a workout because you don't need to make your muscles stretch before you start training.
No.
It's quite a personal choice when you do it, really. So up to 3 times a week, probably. And however you feel. If it makes you feel good, then as often as you have time for, really.
Yeah, I used to do it every day after training.
Really?
Yeah, unless I got home wet and cold.
Wow.
In which case, then, no chance.
I stretched about once a year normally. Next up, David Alexander. I recently changed work locations in the last year and I'm now working across a very large river. There are no options for me to ride across the river. I'm not surprised because riding across water tricky, but there are bikes out there, water bikes. Anyway, sorry, that wasn't the question. There are no options for me to ride across the river. I have to use a ferry. This hasn't been an issue until the weather started getting cold. I find myself standing around more or less outdoors for 20 to 30 minutes for the ferry. By the time I get back on my bike, I'm quite cold again. Is there anything I can do in the cramped confines of the ferry to keep some of the warmth I got on my way to the boat? Thanks.
Star jumps?
Mm-hmm, star jumps.
Or just pack some extra clothing.
Yep.
Especially a hat or like a waterproof jacket that will really keep the warmth in.
Yeah.
Or you could also try and not build up a sweat before you got on the ferry, because if you warm up before you get there, you're really going to notice the effects as you're cooling down, especially with moisture on you as well.
Yeah, but a hat's tiny. If you don't have much space, pack it down, put it in a plastic bag so you don't sweat on it, and put it on, take your helmet off, put the hat on, and that keeps most of your body heat in.
Yep.
But star jumps, I think.
Yeah.
You can also pack tea in a thermos.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh.
Hot drink.
Oh, lovely. Next up, Vimeo YT asks, please can you tell me why I can train easier with the team than at home? And could you guys do a video for stretching to do after training?
Well, the second part's really easy. We've definitely got some videos on the channel of stretching. So if you just type that in the search bar. The reason you find it easier to train with others is probably like your perceived exertion. Some people are really motivated when they're around others, but yet when they train by themselves, they really suffer and find it really difficult to push as hard as they did. Personally, I love training alone when no one could see me suffering, but that's not always the case for everyone.
Yeah, that's funny because I find it much easier to train hard with other people because I find that it sort of helps me push myself. And I enjoy it more. It feels mentally easier and physically harder. So that's why I really love training with other people. But it's a very personal thing. I mean, I assume you're asking like comparing watts for watts, not comparing speed, because obviously if you're training with a group in your team, then you're going to go faster for the same effort.
Yep, that's aerodynamics.
Yep.
Right then, Martin Cheetle. Which of the GCN crew can do bike maintenance from a basic puncture to a complex replace loose bearings?
Well, it's pretty easy really. John Cannings can do everything.
John is the master.
Yeah. I think most GCN presenters are pretty good, apart from myself. And I will freely admit that I am rubbish, so I can definitely change a puncture.
Maybe we should all build a bike.
No.
Have it timed, so you can do it the quickest.
We literally do not have time in a working week for me. It would take me all year. I I mean, I could probably strip a bike down. I could take stuff off the bike. I just don't know how to put it back on in the right way.
It's easy. You just put stuff on where it came off. Trial and error. That's the way everyone learns. Right then, CMAD. I love the show. Please can you compare the advantages and disadvantages of the common fitness tests? In other words, 20 minutes versus 2 times 8 minute tests versus a ramp test or versus the new 4DP test. My results seem quite varied depending on which one I do. So thank you.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. And a lot of people say, oh, I did an FTP test and I got to X power or to X level. And the thing is that all the tests are different. So it's not that any of them are unreliable unless they're run badly, but the point is that they're all slightly different. So they'll give you a gauge of your fitness, but they're not really comparable. So if you want to measure your fitness, you just need to make sure you pick one of the tests and do that one, although not too often because you'll get bored and you'll get stale. And
exactly. And also you kind of train to do the test if you keep on doing it repeatedly, and you'll just get good at doing the test, which isn't always a fair representation of your fitness.
Definitely, yeah. So back in my day, we did like a boring old school ramp test, but the length of the ramp was different depending. So my pro team would test us with a certain length ramp, and British Cycling would test with a different one, and I got to totally different powers because in one of them I got tired because it went on for 35 minutes, and the other one was only 15, so it was much easier. So anyway,
pick one and stick to it.
Pick one, stick to it.
Once every 6 weeks is probably the most you need to do it though. You know, things rarely change that often in your body.
Twice a year is maximum. I can
exactly. Like twice a year is probably fine, to be really honest.
I find it mentally very, very draining doing those tests, so keep them spaced out.
Right, Hoyt Anders. I've been really enjoying all of the indoor training videos on the channel. Could you recommend a weekly routine of training videos to follow to improve general cycling fitness? I can rarely get outside during the cold months, but I'd like to keep fit if possible. Right now, I'm alternating between doing one that focuses on strength one day and one HIIT session the next day. I usually do one 30 to 45 minute video a day for 3 or 4 days in a row, and then I take a rest day. Does that sound like a good plan?
Well, that sounds like quite a lot of intensive training in a week to me. And I think if you're going to do that much intense indoor riding, you want to maybe structure it a bit better. So it's fine to try to do two to 4 really hard intensive sessions indoor in a week, but you probably wouldn't want to do more because you won't get any benefit. You'll just be getting tired and you won't be able to actually do the intensity you need to get a benefit from it. So maybe start with 2 to 4, depending on how you feel, and split them up. So you've got 2 blocks of 2 days.
Then you come back for the second block fresher,
which means you can push harder. You need to have a complete rest day probably once a week, and recovery between the sessions is key. And you don't want to forget your endurance. So if you do get time at the weekends, maybe do a longer endurance ride.
Yeah, even if it's just 2 hours, it's going to help you.
Hope this video has been interesting and informative. If you do have any more questions, please use the hashtag talkback or hashtag Ask GCN Training. And that, of course, gives you a chance to win 3 months of subscription to Zwift, which is very useful now that it's getting cold and dark in the Northern Hemisphere, and going outside to train is, well...
It's grim.
It's grim. It's grim. I've been on Zwift 5 times this week already, I reckon.
It's only Wednesday. Make sure you leave any comments you have in the box below. Even without the hashtag, we'll still get back to them.
Yep, and give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends. And if you haven't seen it yet, please go and watch James's Red Hook Milan.
It's probably epic, the Red Hook crit in Milan.
Oh, it was, I was on the edge of my seat, literally, and I nearly cried at the end. It was
worth a watch.
Emotional, yeah. I think Hank cried as well, so it's okay.